Okay, I absolutely love this movie, and I've seen a lot of World War II movies. Now, one of the reasons why I like this one in particular is that it's not every day you get to see a movie about Norway and their own part in World War II. I've seen lots of them, those about how the British fought back against the Nazis, how the Russians fought back, how Belgium was taken over by the Nazis, Austria. You know, one of the first movies that told me, or where I got to see the impact the Germans had on Austria, was in Sound of Music. I know that wasn't actually a World War II movie as such, but it was during the same era. This movie is so good, Narvik. Not because it's the best action film I've seen lately. It doesn't have that much action. It doesn't even have too much tension, although the tension is there, especially when the heroine did her best to try to play the Germans for information, and at the same time hiding certain officials that were wanted by the Nazis. And it was also interesting to see that this movie wasn't all about the atrocities of the SS or the Gestapo in other countries conquered by the Germans. Although one cannot say that the invasion of Norway was not an atrocity. Don't get me wrong, it's a total atrocity. Norway was a neutral nation and they were invaded by the Germans for their iron ore. So that was not right, it was wrong. All I'm saying is that people involved in this war had to make choices, very difficult choices, like the woman who acted as a translator for the Germans. She was also seen as a traitor. So by the time the Germans left and Norway had been reoccupied by the French and the British, she was seen as a traitor. So when people were looking for a way out of Norway on a boat at the end of the movie, she was one of those who was pushed aside. Nobody liked her. They didn't want her to join. Although at the same time, I can understand the self-preservation that would make her do what she did in acting as a translator for the Germans. I could understand the fear, the uncertainty of that time that made you an unwitting collaborator with the Germans. But at the same time, I can understand the misgivings of the people of Norway, or at least of Narvik, against her for collaborating with the Germans against her own people who were being killed, who were being treated inhumanely. And here she was collaborating. I also understood that she had no choice. It was self-preservation. Nobody was there to care for her, so she had to make her own decisions herself. Her husband was away fighting with the other soldiers of Norway, and although their life wasn't an easy life, they had difficult choices to make also, but nobody could ever call them treacherous or being a traitor because they were fighting for their country. She, on the other hand, was fighting for the life of her father-in-law as well as her son. She still lost her father-in-law, and her son she did her best to protect. And one could see that the Germans didn't really care for her when you get to realize the gravity of the side she was taking by collaborating with the Germans when her son was hit by a stray bullet and she brought it to the Germans, and she brought her child to the Germans and begged for help to save his life. And she was being explained to that it was a military decision that German soldiers who were injured would be cared for over anybody else, over civilians from Norway. So although she's been a very good worker for the Germans, her son did not take priority over wounded German soldiers. And that was where I felt she really came to see the predicament she was in. There was nowhere to get real help, and those who she felt would help her, although they were the enemy, proved that they were the enemy because they did not help her. They seemed polite. It was strange how polite the German officer or official was. He sounded quite nice. He just wanted her to understand that he had no power over what he could do. She was giving him too much credit for power he did not wield or possess. And I felt sorry for the child, although eventually the child's life was saved thanks to her countrymen who came to help. And at the end of the movie, when her husband finally returned and they had taken over Narvik and the Germans had run away, and everybody was expecting the Germans to come back and bomb the city, which they did eventually, her husband just couldn't understand how his wife could be a collaborator, because the word had gone round that she collaborated with the Germans, although he wasn't told in uncertain terms. So he wasn't sure how his wife collaborated with the enemy, but he had heard word, and so he had his first fight with her after returning from the war, and he almost let her leave with her child and without him. But love always saves the day at the end of these movies. He meets them on the boat, he forgives her, and they travel off Norway. But the sad part about the ending of the movie was that the movie ended at 1940, which meant there was still some years of World War II left. And that was at the same time that, according to the village rumors going around, France had been attacked, Britain had also been attacked, which meant that wherever they were sailing to, it better be to the United States or something, because nowhere in Europe was safe at this time. Going to Poland, that wouldn't be a very nice choice, because we know how it ended eventually with the Warsaw Ghetto and the mass killings there. This movie is quite good because it just shows you that people will do what people will do in a terrible situation. There's no good choice. You work with the Germans, you are still an enemy of the Germans and an enemy to your people. If you don't work for the Germans, although they know you speak the language and you can be of use to them, they can have you killed. These are the Nazis we're talking about. So either way you die. So I can understand wanting to preserve life, wanting to stay alive, and because you didn't want to die, you had to collaborate. I don't think she really understood the gravity of what she was doing, because she thought she was just helping to, I don't know, let peace reign, because all she did was act as an interpreter. But she didn't always go out to give up people, although she did eventually, but she wasn't always a traitor giving out people, and she actually helped, but nobody was looking at all the good she did, which is one thing about life. People don't see all the good you did. They always focus on that one wrong, and all the good you've ever done disappears in the light of this one wrong, which is very unfair, because she's been a very good mother, she's been a very good friend, good neighbor, she saved lives, and somehow all that got forgotten because she was a translator for the Germans, and then she was branded a collaborator, which during World War II was the worst thing that could happen to anyone, to be seen as collaborating with Germany, that was the enemy of the whole of Europe, and see your people killed and you still collaborate, you still work with the enemy. And people might even wonder, why didn't she escape when she had a chance to? I know the part of the part of Norway she lived seemed like an island, so I really guess she had no choice but to come back. And besides, she was found and she was brought back. And I like the way she smiled, like, she was waiting for the Germans to find her and bring her back safely. And it's crazy, but it all ended well in the end. It's a great movie. You need to see this one. It's not like any other war movie I've seen. It's wonderful. It's lovely. Happy ending. But then it shows you the uncertain future because of the world war still continued. Wonderful.